following is a list of 10 first-hand sightings of the Mothman that were submitted and displayed publicly on the Mothman Lives website. These are unconfirmed and unofficial witness testimonies from the internet. I am a 33-year-old business professional living in Arkansas. I am writing to report something that my boyfriend and I saw while traveling southeast on Highway 63 at around 10:30 p.m. on December 12, 2007. It was raining, and visibility was difficult on this particular night. We travel this highway at least twice a week and have never noticed anything unusual before. We had just crossed the overpass and rounded a sharp turn. After merging onto Highway 63, we had to pass under the particular bridge/overpass we had just driven over a minute prior. I was in the passenger seat when I noticed a tall, dark figure of a man in a semi-crouching position on the bridge out of the corner of my eye. And as I focused on it, the figure rose and stood, and I glanced over to my left to see my boyfriend leaning forward to look upward as we passed under the bridge. I asked, "Did you see that?" To which he replied, "Yes, what was it?" It appeared to be about 7 feet tall at least. Neither of us saw anyone on the bridge/overpass when we crossed it, or any vehicles parked on or near the bridge/overpass. Looking back from the other side, I could see nothing. It was raining rather hard, and there was only a minimal amount of light coming from the gas station in the distance. When I returned alone around 12 a.m., I drove out of my way to see if I could see if possibly a new sign had been placed there or if there had been a jumper or anything out of the ordinary, and I did not see anything unusual, nor did I hear of anything happening that night. I'm not sure what it was, but after a few minutes, my boyfriend asked me to stop speaking about it. I didn't see any wings, but had an eerie feeling about the whole experience. I am not sure if there have ever been any Mothman sightings in the area, but we didn't tell anyone about what we had both seen, as we live in a rural area where emphasis on education is minimal and intelligent conversation is scarce. Any insight or information? Lisa M. sighting. I sent you a sighting on the Ohio River 2 weeks ago off a ridge outside. A bird or whatever it was huge, certainly not any natural type of wildlife in this area, nor was it a hang glider of any sort. It disappeared into the trees out of sight as it descended toward the river. As I noted before, it was in broad. There was daylight between 2:30 and 3 o'clock 2 Saturdays ago. I'd appreciate it if you would note my sighting. Also, please don't email me back. If my husband sees it, he'll think I'm losing it. He doesn't have much interest in any of this stuff. Thanks for looking at my previous mailing, which I sent when the event was. It is very fresh and clear in my memory. M. Lone Wolf, Arkansas. Hello there. I am sure you probably get thousands of emails about strange happenings and bizarre events, but I have something for you too. I haven't heard of Mothman until today, as resulting in the experience of what happened to me last night/early this morning. I was referred to look on the internet to find something from friends at work who I solely trusted with this that would not think that I was crazy or losing my mind. When I got home from work, I talked to a friend that's like a brother to me, and he also agreed for me to research the net. To start off with, I live in a small town, Jesseville, Arkansas. It's just outside of Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. My name is Charles D. Black, part Native American. I go by Lone Wolf. This is what happened to me last night/early this morning. I live in a very small camper. Last night wasn't any different than any other night. There are 2 Belgian mules and 2 ponies with about 6 horses that freely roam this 64-acre property. I leave to go to work around 4 a.m., so I go to bed about 6 or 7 p.m. sometimes in the night. I hear the roaming of the animals here, along with them once in a while of scratching themselves by rubbing their bodies on the camper. Nothing strange about that. About a week ago, I changed the sleeping position of myself due to the headlights shining through the camper from my brother's daughter's car from when she gets home from work. Last night, I was really restless more than usual. There were a lot more noises outside around the camper than usual. There was also like something was pounding on the camper in the middle of the night. I remember waking up due to a light that was very bright coming through the window. For a moment I thought it was my brother's daughter coming home, but then I realized the window without a curtain is facing the wooded part of the property. I was awake then. It wasn't an ordinary type of light. It was very intense, and it had an orange glow to it, almost like a setting sun. I looked out the window, but I couldn't see anything. I had the sense that someone or something was watching me. Because I am self-assured and believe that there is a logical explanation for everything, I simply rolled over and tried to sleep again. I felt the camper move like something was pushing on it. I thought it was just a mule or a horse. Then there was pounding on the camper again. I had an electric heater in the camper and remember awakening to find it very cold and having the sense that I wasn't alone. I opened my eyes and thought I saw a large black shadow looking at me for a few seconds. It was gone. I breathed very deeply for a few moments and seen my breath condensates in the air. It was extremely cold on the camper for a couple of minutes. I looked at the clock and seen it was time for me to go to work. I got up, changed and checked the door to make sure it was still locked, of which it was. I went out to my van and started it, turned on the lights and noticed that there was feed buckets on the ground. I picked them up and put them in the back of my brother's truck. I drove out, opened and closed the gate and then proceeded to drive to work. I usually have about a 45-minute drive to work. I remember going through an S-curve and seeing a white plastic bag in a tree on the right side of the road. For some reason, it caught my attention. Just after I turned my head, all of a sudden, I seen a swarm or about 100 or so like birds, bats, moths, I don't really know. It happened so fast, coming right down the middle of the road. I cranked the steering wheel hard to the left and tried to avoid as much contact as I could with whatever they were. I remember hearing thuds off of my van and seeing things bounce off my windshield in the front of my van. It was like they all had these small bright red eyes or something. They were like tracing flashes off my van. Strange and bizarre, yes indeed. It was around 4:15 a.m. and in the dark. No birds were flying at that time. It's winter here and the bats are dormant. It's too cold for insects right now. I just know that they looked like bats, which is the closest thing that I can think of. I never stopped and kept on driving to work. When I got to work, I left the lights on and got out to check for any damage. There was nothing there. A work friend came over and asked me if I hit a deer or something. I was still a little shaken up and kept faith in telling him what happened. I still had the sense that something was watching me and kept looking over my shoulder all day long. My friend from work told me about Mothman and said I should watch the movie and check the net to see if anything compared to what happened to me. He also told me to let him know what was going on for the next couple of days. Boy, that was something really nice to hear, thinking that I was done with this ordeal. All throughout my workday, I tried to make sense of any of this and couldn't. I finished my day at work and drove back home. I even stopped where I saw that plastic bag in the tree and looked all over for something and I couldn't find anything. I got home and told my brother, and he told me to call my mom. My mother is dying from cancer and only has about a month or so to live. I called my mother, and she was doing about as well as she could for her condition right now. Even as I write to you now, I still have this feeling that something is watching me. I have checked the net out and some things are kind of the same, but a little different. Also, the buckets that I put in the truck this morning were on the porch and the gate to the yard for my brother's house was open, and his stud colt was out loose, and as we know, no one put the buckets on the porch. It was also said that sometime during the time that I left for work and the time that everyone else got up here, there was a knocking on the front door of my brother's house. I know I picked up those buckets and put them in the bed of the truck and the yard gate was closed. I saw the colt watching me the whole time. The yard gate was closed. Can you make any sense of this? Thank you for your time, help, and cooperation. Thank you again. The Lone Wolf. Don't pick lemons. My girlfriend and I witnessed an unexplained object or creature on the roof of a building in Mattapan Square in May of 2012. We worked for her dad's security company and in May we had the night shift at construction site on Blue Hill Avenue. I had been sitting in her car and we just got into an argument, so I decided to get in my own van to get away from her for a while. As I was surfing the web on my cell phone, I noticed something moving on the roof of the building next to the job site. As I look up, I see a fairly large shadowy figure walking or gliding along the rooftop. As I am peering out my window at it, it stops and turns towards our cars. The best way I can describe it is that it looked almost identical to the sketch the teenagers drew after the first sighting of the Mothman in Point Pleasant. It had what looked to be large feathery wings and two almond golden eyes. I know that it's not the typical Mothman description, but I don't know what else it could have been. After about 3 to 5 minutes of it sitting there, it ran and jumped off the roof, flying in the air towards Quincy and Braintree. I watched it fly for about 5 minutes before it was out of sight. The object or creature flew in odd patterns, dipping and flying side to side, but not in a straight line. The only way I saw it was that it was illuminated in a golden bright light. I couldn't tell if it was the moon's reflection of it or if it was generating its own. But I only got a look at it in the dark. I hear stories of UFO, Bigfoot, ghosts, and demons, and ask myself, can they all be real or maybe just some? I believe that we have only just scratched the surface of reality, and the truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. Nate J. This was in 2002. I was driving a tour bus with 5 sleeping bandmates at about 3 a.m. going to San Francisco, about 2 hours away on the 5. This colossus appeared out of nowhere. A white humanoid bird creature at least 6 to 8 feet in size swooped down and filled my windshield, scaring me half to death. I don't know how I didn't hit this creature, or what it was. It made me wonder if there was other sightings along that stretch of the 5. I also wonder if I was planning. The adrenaline I got from this encounter is still kicking in. That's what kept me awake for the final drive and saved us. I told my brother. He had just seen that movie and had immediately told me about it at the time. Tell me about the Mothman phenomenon. Bizarre stuff. Hey Jeff. I hope you are doing well. I don't know if you remember me, but you probably would if you saw a pic. Anyway, I know I've told you about my son's sighting from 2006 when I spoke with you at the museum, but I never submitted it to be included on the page, assuming you still have time to update said page. In case you are still adding to it, here's my story. On Thursday, November 2nd, 2006, my son and I were heading to Ravenswood, not too far from Point Pleasant. It was just before 5 p.m. and it was starting to become dusk. On my side of the road, I saw an extremely tall human-like figure literally jump/float straight up from the ground to the top of the trees. There are no houses nearby, just trees and some empty land behind. I felt no fear, just a feeling of wow, what the hell was that thing? I mentioned it to my son a couple of minutes ago. I told him later when we neared town, but did not tell him exactly where I had seen it. He told me he had seen it as well, but we both stayed silent because of some other weird things that had been happening lately at our home. We were spooked enough as it was. I had not stopped to turn around because I was in a hurry to get home. I was somewhere before a certain time. On our way home, maybe 75 to 100 feet further down the road from the original site, both my son and I saw the figure again. He was moving upward through the branches of the trees. Yesterday, Friday, November 3rd, 2006, right before dark, my son saw it again, outside, near a small patch of woods. My son noted red eyes during this second sighting. After some research, I knew what we had seen was the Mothman. Before I start, I would like to say I have never seen the movie, and if this hadn't happened to me, I probably wouldn't have believed it was true. My search based upon what I saw has led me to this website. I would like to keep. This is a short story, so here it goes. About 3 years ago, I saw this human-like figure with wings like a bat perched on top of a light post on a dirt road just outside the city limits. The only reason I noticed it was because the light was in front of a stop sign. My buddy Doug was in the car with me and pointed it out to me. We must have studied it for about 5 minutes. I was so scared I could barely move. The first thing that was running through my mind was the movie Jeepers Creepers. My palms were sweaty and my hands could hardly move without shaking, and I could see it staring at us just as much as we were at him. Eventually, I mustered up enough courage to turn at the stop sign. As soon as I did, I noticed its head had turned in the direction I was going, so I floored the gas pedal. Out of panic, I noticed it took flight. I did not stop going till I got back into town. I thought that was the end of it, but a couple of weeks ago, down that same road without having any other sightings, I hit something with my car, or more like something hit me. I still have the dent to prove it. It was foggy outside, so my first instinct was, I must have hit a cow or something, but all I saw was a black, about 7 foot tall, and it was standing upright. If I lived anywhere else, I would say I hit a black bear or something like that, but I live in Oklahoma, and we don't have bears here, and it was slender and humanoid-like. I got out of my car, inspected the dent, and made sure I didn't hit anyone, but I didn't see anything, no human or animal anywhere, so I went to get back in my car, and what do I see behind me? That same creature hunched over on the same light post staring at me, almost like it was toying with me. Hello, my name is Raphael, and I have witnessed the Mothman, or something close to it, due to many different stories. Ever since I can remember, I have seen many different things in my life. As a child, to my age now, I am 23 years of age, and I will never forget the things I have seen. Some speak of us being crazy, but there are those that have their own shared experience. I was born in Georgia but now live in Florida. There have been several encounters with this creature. It's just recently that I've become so more influenced to dig for more information. I will share my memorable encounter. It was around 9:45 p.m., or close to it, on February 15, 2008. I had just got back from Florida after a visit. I was making my way down the Abbeville Highway to Eastman, Georgia. This road is very isolated. Few houses down the road, and it stretches of 15 miles is a good distance. Woods and darkness at night, also full of sharp curves. As I made my way down the road, maybe 4 to 5 miles before getting to Eastman, I got to this sharp curve when I saw it standing there. Tall, bold, dark, red eyes. Getting chills from the thought coming to mind. All I could do was stare at it because I knew what I saw. I didn't stop because I just wanted to get home. As I got close, it sprung up as it opened its large wings like a demon from hell. Hell, after that, my breathing got a little out of control from the experience, a mixture of fear and that rush of wanting to get home. I couldn't shake the thought off. I finally got to Eastman and the feeling was locked in my spine. I called my mother to see if she was home. She tells me they are at my oldest sister's house for dinner. My family has the tendency to talk. As a result, we ended up staying for several hours, so I went from town to my sister's. It's a good 12 minutes or so. Still, the thought in my mind and the urge to get where my family is. Well, before getting to my sister's house, there is a 4-way stop sign, so I made it past that and finally got to my sister's place. They asked how. So was the trip, and so on. Well, I was there for not too long. I wanted to go home and sleep because it was a really long drive, and the encounter was still making me a little jumpy. I told them my goodbyes and made my way. Well, before making my way to the 4 stop sign. There it was again. I signed on that stop sign as if it was waiting for me. The rush came, and I froze. With my high beams on, I could see it perfectly. Crouched down on the sign, bold and black as night, but there are always those red piercing eyes that freeze you at sight. Before I could, it was gone when I moved. Straight up into the night. I did nothing but did a U-turn and went straight back to my sisters and told them what had happened. During my time of sightings, I've seen ghosts and even something close to a demon. I heard noises and unwanted presences. But my encounter, which I can refer to as the Mothman, is by far the most shocking. Another thing that comes to my attention is the story of the Owl Man. They share the image, but both bring a terrifying image and what follows it. And Omen, it's been great to share this story. I hope you enjoy. Thank you. Hi there. So about 6 months ago, I was camping in what's called the Maple Valley State Forest in upstate New York. It's about 800 acres of nothing. I found a fairly fresh cut log grassy trail and drove my buddy and I went about 1/4 mile into the forest until it dead ended. There was a section of large pine trees there and we set up camp. Well, let me tell you, the night became very interesting at about 12:01 a.m. First off, I should say that I did know there were barred owls out there. We could see them as well as hear them. And we know what eyeshine is and looks like. I've been camping for years. So I turn around to prepare some food and say, what the hell is that? When I turned back around, a large bright red dot was descending from the treetops and coming ever so close to us. We did not dare take our eyes off it as it settled behind a tree about 50 to 75 feet away from our camp. When I tell you it was pitch black, I mean you couldn't see your hand in front of your face unless you were standing right next to the very tiny, almost burnt out fire we had going. So I walked about 10 feet over to peer into the trees to get a better look. This thing. And all of a sudden, a pair of very large, glowing red eyes peered out right back at us. I swear to you, I have never seen eyes this red before. Now the thing is, if we had seen this thing for a few seconds, I would still be second guessing myself. But whatever it was, it continued to stare back at us for no less than a full 5 minutes. No, we were not drunk and no, we were not high. This happened. What's even stranger is, we had heard an owl make a very odd guttural sound, as if I was choked or dying, about 15 minutes before this. In addition, the forest is silent after it. I mean, not a peep. No more crickets, no deer, no more owls. And then the eyes appeared. And when I say it peered from behind the tree, I mean it would watch us without blinking, then slowly creep behind the tree. Then peer out again a few seconds later. To this day, I kick myself for not walking into the darkness to get a close-up look at whatever this was. But in those 5 minutes, I'm sure he'll not move from my spot. I have contacted a New York paranormal research group about this incident, and will hopefully be making an excursion to the same spot in the spring. I have to do a full investigation. My friend and I know what we saw, and it was nothing naturally known. I can tell you that with 100% certainty. The eyes were a few inches across, completely red, unblinking, and were equally bright and completely unwavering whether we shone a light at them or if they were pitch black. It was most certainly not your normal eye shine. Perhaps the strangest thing of all was that we didn't even see a body or silhouette when we directed a flashlight in its direction. Has anyone else seen the Mothman in the upstate New York region forests? I'm very curious to know. My name is Seth, and I have encountered the Mothman. I watched the movie about 5 years ago, so you can't tell me it was my imagination. I was recently in Chesapeake, Virginia. My cousins have a big toy room, and that is where I slept, along with my sister and my other 2 cousins. That night, I woke up and looked straight up. I saw something moving out of the window. I didn't bother to look out of it, but then I saw a red light come through the window. I saw something move again, and I got up to look outside. I then saw my father pulling the car out of the driveway, with the back end towards me, and the brake lights were on. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and my dad gets up around 4 o'clock, so I wasn't surprised. But when I turned back around, a stick came crashing to the roof. There is a cluster of trees outside the playroom window. I looked back out the window again and saw something fly into another cluster of trees in the neighbor's yard, and then jump from tree to tree. That was it for that day. The next day, we went to Northumberland, Pennsylvania. It snowed, and when my other cousins, my sister, and I went outside, I felt like someone was watching me the entire time. When we played hide and go seek, I heard a noise behind me, about 50 feet away, still close enough to hear, and I looked around to see what it was. But all I saw were 2 big red things. When I really focused, I saw that the red things were moving. It then went up into the trees all the way down the road. I really didn't give much thought to it. My whole family went to Walmart to get odd and ends before my parents went to New York for a wedding they were going to. And what did I find but a whole case of DVDs on sale, and I found the Mothman prophecies. Since it was cheap, my parents bought it for me, and I watched it. I really didn't take it to heart. We then went to my grandmother's house in Powhatan, Virginia. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary there. But we then went back to my original cousin's house. Things got really weird, and you have to understand that this is really weird, and I am not the type to imagine things. When I came back to my cousin's house, we went to sleep, and I flipped over. I heard squeaking, sharp noises, and I looked up to see a dark shadow type thing in the corner. I blew it off, thinking it was just a sound, and it was just a roll of carpet. My cousins got new carpeting put in the day after I left their house the first time, and they had a roll in the corner. When I got up, there was nothing in the corner I saw the shadow-like thing in. Scared the blazes out of me.